So, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. And joining me today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined with one of my favorite authors in the last decade that I have come across, and that is the one and only Steve McHugh. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks very much for having me on. I've been working all day, which is what I do every day these days.
Yeah, I mean, you just had a new book out, and so congratulations on that, of course.
Thank you very
But
much.
one of the funny things is when you talk to any authors that are working full time, like writing full time, should I say, is that you probably finished work on that book months ago, and you've been working on something else since then in the background.
Yeah, I finished this January 2021.
Right.
And then I was going to publish it whenever it was last year, and my agent read it and said, "No, we're going to find a publisher for it." And then a publisher picked up some other books instead of mine called Riftborn. And my agent was like, "You can self-publish this if you want because they've picked up something else.
Right. Yeah.
So you do what you want with it." So that's what I did.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, the cover for it is amazing as well. It's great. I've got it on my I've got it on my Kindle. I've not read it yet because I'm up to book 3 in the Rebellion Chronicles. So I was like, I'm going to finish
Okay.
it first and then read it. I know it's like not the same series or anything, but I was like, I want to finish what I'm reading first.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I am currently reading that. So I mean, congratulations anyway. It seems like it's been a great launch, #1
Yeah.
bestseller, which is great to see.
It has. It's had this little orange bestseller tag, which is always nice to get, and people seem to like it, which is even better.
Yes.
And it's sold, so that's better as well. So no, yeah, it's done. I'm very happy with how it's done. It met my hopes for what it would do. It's done as well as I hoped that it would do.
Excellent. That's
Thankfully.
good. Because we were just talking before we went on that this is your 10th year anniversary of your first being published. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment to kind of, I mean, you're quite prolific as well. And every single book is really well received. Obviously, you were nominated for the Gemmell Award as well a few years back for the 7th book in the series, which is like
Yeah, I know. Weird.
yeah.
Absolutely bonkers. It really was. Strangest few weeks of my entire life. It was
So
really odd.
what was that like then? I mean, obviously, being the first thing being nominated for a Gemmell Award is obviously a huge achievement and something you should be very, very proud of. But also for it being the final book in a series as well, was it kind of like when Return of the King won all the Oscars? It was like, well,
Yeah, it was when I got told I was nominated. I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. Wonder who else is on there. And then I saw Robin Hobb was on there, and I was like, wow, I'm not winning this. That's it. I'm not winning, am I? I mean, that was fine. Robin Hobb did win in the end, and I think that's, if you're going to lose to Robin Hobb.
right? Yeah,
Um,
she's fantastic.
and she's great.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was awesome being nominated. I got to go to the award ceremony and see all of that, and it was a really nice few days, and I had a really nice time. And then unfortunately, it was the last Gemmell Awards. They never did another one,
Right. Yeah.
and that was quite sad because I thought they were a really important part of publishing award wise.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that's one of the great things that you can insist that people introduce you as, that you were nominated for the very final Gemmell Award.
Award nominated author.
Yeah.
Such a good year of nominees. They never did another one.
Right. Yeah. It's like, we can't top this.
Yeah, that's it. It's as good as they're getting. We're done now. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, it was very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, because I mean, it's been obviously, like, it's a great series, and I can see that the logic of like with Return of the King, where it's like, let's just crown this entire thing by doing it at the last book. But it's so rare that happens, because usually with a lot of awards, it's always kind of, I mean, in Spiffbo, for example, people are generally encouraged to put in the first of a series anyway, because, like, they want to that's the way they want people to start reading them. So it's so unusual that the last book of the series, but I suppose that just goes to show how good of a book it was. So if you've not read it, or you've not read Steve's reviews, people that are watching at YouTube or listening on Spotify, check it out, because it's so good. They've never done the award ceremony again.
Yeah. That's the excuse I'm sticking with. It was so good they couldn't do anymore. That was it. No, it was cool. It was nice that I got to finish the story as well, and that that was my favorite book of the 7 that at the time that I'd written, because it's the one where everything is revealed and
right, yeah,
things come to fruition, and it was fun, a lot of fun to write.
Excellent. And obviously that was the kind of start of one part of your journey in publishing, because it was, you know, which started in 2012 with the series. When is it you decided that you wanted to be a writer, and when did you start writing? I presume you may have written other books that have never seen the light of day before you got that one. But when did you kind of start working on that one, the first one that you were published?
I wanted to be a writer when I was 13. That's when I decided I wanted to write. It was an English class, and in English class, my teacher was Mr. Piercy, and he said that we had like every week you had to write the book you'd written that week on like a chart, so that everyone in the class did. And Mr. Piercy took me to one side and he said, "Stephen, you need to stop just reading these fantasy, the Dice, Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson books."
Right.
Because I'd written loads of them on there, just loads of names of the same book, basically, with different kind of. Just go to the library, which was next door, and just grab a couple of books. So I went next door and I picked up Terry Pratchett's Men at Arms, Neil and Gemmell's first Druss book.
Right.
And I devoured them. And then I went to the library and picked up Stephen King's It, and I should not have been reading Stephen King's It at 13, but that's, you know, in hindsight. And then I devoured that, and then I read everything I could, remotely horror, fantasy, science fiction. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. But it was then a case of doing nothing with it for years. And then when I was 25, my wife and I were going to have our first kid. And I decided that was the time to kind of get on with it. I was either going to do it and give it a go, or I was going to not and find something else that I wanted to do.
Right.
So I wrote a book called For Past Sins, and it took me years to write. I think about 3 or 4 years to write, because anyone who ever writes their first book, and they've got to learn how to write and how to find your voice, and it just takes forever. And I wrote For Past Sins, and it went out on submission, and I got lots of "this is very good," but sort of thing. It wasn't very good. I thought it was, looking back on it, I can see all of the mess that I'd made of that first book.
Right.
But that first book got completely rewritten, and it became Crimes Against Magic, which did get published.
Yes.
Self-published. Again, I tried to get a publisher, and I got the same as very good, but. And then a friend of me said, "Why don't you put it into the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award? Because it's not got an agent, it's not got a publisher. See what happens." And it got to the semi-finals. And then I thought, well, you know what? I'm just gonna have a go then. So lots of it was 2012 was a time when a lot of people were self-publishing, and a lot of people were gaining a lot of success in self-publishing.
Right. Yes.
It was that first real wave of Kindle self-published authors, and there were quite a lot of them. I thought I'd give it a go, and then I gave it a go, and that was 2012. And a year later, I had a publishing contract with a publisher who would contact me and said, "We want to publish all of your books."
Nice.
And the year after that, I got an agent, and then it just went from then and on and on and on. So yeah, I've always wanted to write. It was just getting my arse in gear to actually write.
Right, it's funny the way that it happened for you, because that's very similar with minus the raging success. Like, hopefully that will come later on. But I was later in life. Like, I only got published the first time last year, and I only started writing a couple of years ago. But it was something that I always wanted to do. And then my son was born, and I was like, well, I've been in upper retail management, which I never wanted to do after I left university, and I have nothing to show my son when he's older. So I was like, I've always wanted to write, so let's do it. And so I'll try and get like one thing published and see, like, so I can show him something when he's older. Say, look, you can do this if you have a dream or something like that. So it's nice to hear that it was this similar kind of thing with you as well.
Yeah. It was there was very much and it helps because I was working night shifts at the time, and night shifts where I was working consisted of an 8-hour shift, 4 hours of which you had work,
Right.
and 4 hours of which you tried to stay awake.
Okay.
So it was quite good to do that. And I wrote and worked full time for several years, and I've been full time now for 5 years. I think might be 5 years end of this year. I can't remember exactly anymore. It all blurs into one giant thing
right.
now.
Especially with the pandemic, it's like the last 3 years. Do they even count anymore?
The last 3 years have been like, I don't need. There were times in last year, less of this year, but last year and 2020 when I didn't know what day of the week it was.
Right.
It was just all, especially when we were in lockdown and the kids were all home, and you're like, it doesn't really matter if it's a Sunday anymore or a Saturday. It's the same as yesterday.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Changed.
Yeah, it's like Twilight Zone in a little bit, wasn't
Yeah,
it? It was nice to
go a
spend
bit
time.
Twilight Zone-y. Yeah, it was a bit weird, and so yeah, it all kind of blurred together. And then I kind of had to find a new. The problem I had was kind of overworking. I just kept working and working and writing and writing and writing and writing. And when I wrote the Avalon Chronicles, I wrote all 3 in a year, plus a 4th book, and edited them all, and completely burnt out.
Right.
I didn't write for about 3 months afterwards. And then I could feel the same thing happening in last year. So I just stopped for a bit and took some time off. But yeah, I did find that difficult to kind of like, home work life is very difficult when you can't go anywhere.
Yes, yeah.
That's, so I did find that quite hard.
Yeah, it's nice to get that normality back in a little bit, because like that's the thing, like, with this Brandon Sanderson thing with his Kickstarter, where he's like, well, we were at home all the time, so I just wrote 5 books in secret, and it's like, that's great, but it's not sustainable. Like, you can't be doing, and he's been doing that for a number of years, so
if I did that, that wouldn't be healthy for me.
Yeah.
If I'd have written 5 books in the space of a year or whatever it was he wrote them in, I would be absolutely shattered.
Right.
And especially with his books, and his books are like 5 million words long. So yeah, they'd be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're proper door stoppers.
Yeah, they're not like novellas or something. It's like
no, they're just massive. I mean, the Stormlight books are so big, they've split them in half.
Yeah.
For so people can, I'm assuming, carry them. Because they're just massive. And I'm not saying they're bad, but they are just absolutely huge.
Yeah,
even the smaller books like Steel, the superhero one, that's really good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Steel Slayer or Steel Light, whatever it was called. And they're not small. They're not short books. So to write
400, 500 pages, and that's his like novella size, which is like crazy, right? Isn't it?
That is mad.
Yeah.
Although his Kickstarter, that all the power to for his success on that. That's just
definitely. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. It was great to see. It was amazing just to see the money ticking over and just more records.
He made what, like $25 million at the end or something?
I think it was $42 million in the end.
42 million. Thought I was out by $20 million.
Just 20 million, yeah.
Madness.
I was reading somewhere that like because I saw some people. It was funny because it was one of those things where there was a bit of panic from some traditionally published people at the start, which was kind of strange because I think there's not many people that could do a Kickstarter like that.
No.
I mean, he's a brand on his own. But then there was a bit. It was weird because I mean we are in a lot of the same kind of groups on Facebook, so I always see you popping up on some things and what have you. And I saw a lot of jealousy from some indie authors about it. And like he's got a trad contract, like he's probably got loads of money anyway. But I looked it up and he was after like being probably one of the leading fantasy authors in the last 10 years or whatever, probably even longer. I think he had a net worth of 6 million, which is great, right? But he's like 43 million in a month from Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So that's why he's done it.
He's set himself up, hasn't he? I mean, even if you deduct the Kickstarter fees, which are what 15% or whatever it is, he's still he has to pay for all this stuff, I guess. But but even after he paid for all of that, he's not going to spend 40 million quid on postage, is he? So it's I mean, he's done himself a service there. And no matter what you think about him or his books or his points of view on various things, that might change how publishing works in some circumstances. Because if people get big, really big,
right,
publishers might have to think about how much money they're going to give them, so they don't go and do it for the Kickstarter. Yeah,
exactly. Because I thought it was interesting that not long after Tor announced Golion, announced a new Joe Abercrombie trilogy, which they've obviously been talking to him for a while. But I wonder how that changed negotiations a little bit. Where it's like, I could just kickstart these, and maybe he wouldn't make 43 million like Sanderson did, but I think he'd do quite well.
He'd get pretty close.
Yeah.
I personally prefer Joe's work to Brandon's work.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I think Joe Abercrombie's probably like top 3 current writing fantasy author.
Right.
Up there with I mean, if I'm I don't even know who the other 2 would be if one. But certainly top 3. But he's everything he writes is just absolutely superb.
Yes.
So I imagine there were a few. I guess we better be nice and give him a bit more money.
Yeah. He kept on forwarding on email updates from the Kickstarters to his agent and was like, just so you know what's going on over here, right? So you've worked on both sides of that, because there's a couple of things from what you spoke about before, with your kind of your journey and everything. You've worked on both sides of publishers and self-publishing, and you have an agent as well, which gives you quite a unique kind of look at this thing, because there's always this like debate of what's better for this and what's better for this. And the way I kind of look at it is, I think, I don't know if you agree on that, but I think it depends on the book and the series a lot of the times, how it suits. So obviously you had a publisher come to you at the start, which I think it was 47 North.
47 North, yeah.
And they've done your own kind of thing as well on some of them. So how does that work for you? Like, I mean, you get to see all the different sides of things. That is there a way that you prefer, or is it just?
I like both. If I'm honest, my new series is with Podium, Riftborn, and so they're going to be doing the paperback Kindle. They want to get into Kindle publishing more, and not just audio. So I'm quite excited to work with them, and they're very eager and very keen, and they know a lot about audiobooks. And I think audiobooks are a real way forward.
Right.
And I think it's easier to get an audio deal if you have a traditional publisher than it is if you're self-published.
Yes.
If you're self-published and you want an audio deal, your options are sell loads of books so they come to you and say, do you want an audio deal? Or pay for it yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's it. And I think, so in that terms, the audio, I mean, it's slightly weird because when I said I was going to publish No Gods, a publisher came to me and said, can we publish the audio for it?
Right.
So I know that what I've just said kind of, I've negated my own argument, because the publisher came to me before the book was even out.
Right.
Yeah, we'd quite like to publish this, thank you. And I'm like, we don't know anything about it. It's fine, we've seen the cover. So that's fine. But I think for the most part, and I couldn't say that would ever happen to me again. That might never happen to me again. Then I might self-publish a book and no publisher would offer the audio. It really depends. And I think audio is a big proponent of reading now,
Yes.
much more so than any other time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, self-publishing is probably the easier way to get there.
Right.
Not impossible to do it self-published, but easier.
Mm-hmm.
I also like having someone make my decisions for me with regards to marketing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
Just send me the editor, I'll work with the editor, and I'll send you the edits back. And I like that. I've never had a time where I wasn't involved in the cover of the book, self-published or traditional published.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never ever had a title of my book changed without my knowledge. And I know that the people who was traditional published who said they have.
Mm-hmm.
I never have. I've always had to sign off on the title. There's only been 2 books that have had their titles changed from what they originally were going to be, and both of them I had to sign off on them. The thing about self-publishing is 2 things. One, you can publish quicker, much quicker. Traditional publishing is not a fast place to work at all, until it is. It's very slow, and then everything happens at once. It's very slow again.
Yeah.
And the other thing about self-publishing is that there are things that you can self-publish that a publisher won't take the risk on.
Yes.
And for example, No Gods, Only Monsters, the main character is half werebear.
Mm-hmm.
And when I originally pitched this idea ages ago, before whatever, written it, I got told by a few people, no publisher is going to touch a female were. The original idea for the Avalon Chronicles was Casey as the main character, and it was going to be about her, and she's a werewolf. And I was told at the time that they won't publish a female werewolf book, so we're going to do something else. And it changed into, it didn't actually change that much. It just changed the focus of where the story was going to be.
Okay.
So yeah, I think they sit alongside one another. If I'm honest, I think self-publishing and traditional publishing sit more and more so alongside each other.
Right.
I think if you can get both, having your cake and eating it, then that's great and it works for you.
Yeah.
But I really do think that going forward, you'll probably see more traditional published authors who self-publish stuff.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a lot of people doing that now. And when I was at EasterCon, I was talking to Adrian Tchaikovsky. He kind of mentioned that if he was going to do another Shadows of the Act book or one that was set in that world, he would probably self-publish it. You know, and I thought that was quite interesting. Like I'm with a small independent press, which I think it's good because you get that kind of, as you say, someone to make your decisions for you, which is great. And it's a little bit faster than trad, and not quite as fast as self-published, which I think is good for me, because otherwise I'd be like, I do like that kind of just slow down just a little touch. So it's nice to kind of have that kind of back into on things. I do enjoy that aspect of writing. Like probably my favorite part of writing is once I've actually finished my kind of, I'm turning this into someone else now, where they kind of read it and come back with things. I think that's always my favorite part of it anyway.
Yeah. That collaborative kind of effort to make things better.
Yes.
I always like editing. I like editing because to me that first, and I don't really do a first draft because I edit as I go. But that first kind of draft that you send, the first thing you send to a publisher, when you get the edits back, it's like you've got the jigsaw puzzle and you know what the picture looks like. When you're first writing it, it's like you've got 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle or 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you've got no picture, and all of the pieces are turned over to the grey, and you've got no idea what the hell you're doing. You just have to figure it out.
Right.
Or at least in my brain it does, because I don't really plot things out or anything. But
Mm.
when I've got the edit through, I have a picture. I know exactly what the end result's going to look like, or what it should look like. I just have to move things around and make things better, and change things and make things streamlined. So I like editing. I like writing just straight up, but editing, because you've got a focus. You've got that. I have to make this better kind of line.
Yeah.
And then obviously after that, you've got your copy edits and your line edits and proofreading.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of all that, you're a weeping shell of a human being sat in the corner rocking backwards and forwards. But until then, it's all right.
Up until that point.
Up until that point, it's good.
Yeah, up until that point, yeah. So you mentioned before about how when you first started reading, you were reading a lot of the classics in fantasy and in horror. Do you think that kind of, obviously you're reading sci-fi, fantasy, horror. Do you think that's where the urban fantasy aspects of your writing came from? Because obviously when you started publishing these things, 2012, urban fantasy was not as big as it is now. Like now it's it's everywhere now, and it's there was only a handful of kind of well-known urban fantasy things back in the day. Dresden was just starting off and what have you. So where did that did you actually sit down to think, I'm going to do it like this, contemporary and with these kind of things, or was it just something you stumbled upon kind of?
Comic books.
Right.
It's comic books. I wanted to write a comic book story without superheroes.
Cool.
And I wanted to make it about, I wanted to take things that I loved, which is mythology and history, and twist it all around into urban fantasy. And superheroes is essentially, if you take away all the actual superhero part of it,
right,
they're just people with really a lot of power. Mm. Some of them are quite dark, and I mean Constantine and Hellraiser, should I say? Hellblazer.
Hellblazer. It depends where you are, I think, doesn't it? Hellblazer, yeah.
And Constantine and Image themselves were putting out loads and loads and loads of really interesting little stories and stuff. And I kind of wanted to do that. I wanted to write like that, but not a comic, because I've never written a comic.
Right.
Maybe one day. You never know. But that's kind of where that came from. I read Dresden and Kelly Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
What did I read? Mike Carey and a couple of others around the time that I was writing to be published.
Yes.
And I just thought, I could do something a bit more me in this. And I've always been a big fan of Asian cinema. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to take my love of kind of action films, that kind of style of action films, and kind of fuse that with the urban fantasy. Because that's kind of what, I didn't want to just have quite bland action scenes. I wanted to have these big action set pieces, which are kind of, if you look at Marvel Universe and stuff now, they're all over the place. But they didn't really do too many like that. Dresden did a few, like with the T-Rex and stuff like that. Yeah. But I wanted to do these big bombastic, having been brought up on anime and Hong Kong cinema and all this kind of stuff, that was the sort of thing I wanted to write about, these big kind of stories of action and adventure.
Yeah, very kinetic kind of setup, aren't they? It's almost operatic as well to the sort of action that's going on, which is always great. We can talk a little bit about the MCU and other things in a little while, actually, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment with comics. So so the urban fantasy thing as well. So I wanted to ask you about this for a while, and we talked a little bit about it before we started. So I've only done one book so far in my urban fantasy series, but I decided to set it in Oregon, and when I got up to, so I will draw a line in the sand to say that I did this before I read the first Rebellion Chronicles book, and then when I read the blurb for it, it was like small town Oregon, and I was like, oh wow, that's mad. People are gonna well think I've talked about how I've enjoyed your books before in interviews and stuff, and like one of my big inspirations for uh my series is also Hellblazer, because it's a big fan of Constantine and everything else. So I was like, people are going to think I've ripped off Steve McHugh, and I was like, you know what, I'm fine with this. I don't care. Right.
No,
So,
it's fine.
why did you pick Oregon for it? I'd like to know like what drew you to that place, and also then obviously beyond that, I'm a huge Arthurian legend fan. I love Arthurian legends. It was probably my first read in love as a child was getting into like Arthur and all this kind of stuff, and kind of developed it as I got older alongside more kind of traditional fantasy things. So that series is a real treat for me because it's like, I do love urban fantasy. I love the Arthurian aspects of it. I like your twists that you do on it as well, which I think are really, really intriguing. So yeah, so why Oregon? And then a little bit about the Arthurian aspects of it. Was that something that you just wanted to put your own kind of stamp onto the genre and be like, this is the Britishness of it?
Why Oregon? The two reasons why Oregon. Number one is it's big and there's lots of space, and I can blow up big parts of it without having to worry about parts of the city being blown up as well. I wanted a mountain in the States that I could destroy parts of, and Mount Hood was. I just googled big mountains in America. Mount Hood came up. And I was a really big fan of the TV show called Banshee.
Right, yeah.
And the main character in that is called Lucas Hood. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, okay, that seems that's clearly where it's supposed to be.
Right.
So I set it in Oregon. I grew up listening to grunge, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and all those kinds of stuff. And I just thought I would just destroy a piece of that lovely place. And that's it's how I do all of my. I often think, where should I put this? Let's see if what's the biggest thing I can blow up or something. Right. And in this particular, I also needed a place that could be miles from anywhere. Mm-hmm. Originally, I wanted to set it in Colorado. But I wanted a really big town nearby because of what happens in the story later on.
Yeah.
And Colorado has masses of nothing.
Yeah.
Big towns.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go a bit north and put in Mount Hood. That was what decided it for me. And that's why I picked Oregon. As for the Arthurian thing, I really like the Arthurian legend, but it's been done over and 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 over again. And when I decided that my books would have all mythology would be real, but there weren't really gods and goddesses; they were just people with powers. So that was easy. There was always going to be. If I was going to put Norse mythology and Greeks and Romans and Egyptians and Mesopotamians or whatever, then I was going to have to do English as well, British English. But I did put also there's some Irish stuff in there and Scottish stuff in there as well. But yeah, I kind of and I wanted to twist what had been done before. I never really got on with the idea that Merlin was goody,
right,
and Arthur was squeaky clean, whiter than white kind of thing, and Mordred was this evil monster. So I kind of wanted to change things around and twist stuff, and which I've done with every mythological most mythological
Mhm.
people that I've written about. So yeah, that was why the Arthurian thing. I grew up watching the Arthurian,
Yeah.
reading the Arthurian legends and reading other people's versions of Arthurian legends.
Right.
You can't really throw a stone in fantasy without hitting someone that's written their version of Arthur and
Sure.
the Arthurian legend it reached.
Yeah,
Um,
even my favorite series of all time is Wheel of Time. I was reading it since a kid, and it's the first three books are heavily inspired by
yeah,
Arthurian legends.
yeah. There's a lot of Arthurian. There's a lot of, in fantasy. There's a lot of the wise old wizard and the young boy or girl who's taken along because they're the good guy and all this kind of stuff, and they're to be king, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, Arthurian legends, mythology is really been responsible for lots of people's shaping people's books and writing.
Mhm.
So I knew I wanted to do it because I've always liked it, but I also knew I didn't want to do what everyone else had done. So hence why you got what you got when I wrote it.
Yeah, Nazi. No big spoilers, but Nazi Knights of the Round Table, essentially, which is a fantastic.
Yeah, they're deeply unpleasant people.
Yes.
There's only a couple of them who aren't unpleasant, and they don't really tend to end well. Yeah, one of my favorite things that I wrote in all of the books in the whole series from all 13 books is Lancelot in Horseman's War. Lancelot is a dick. He's just the most awful person, and I knew from book one, I knew that I was going to write him in something.
Right.
I was hoping that he would have been in a book a few back, but it didn't work out. So Horseman's War had to put Lancelot in it, and he's just an awful human being. And
which he would be, wouldn't he? You read all the stuff about Lancelot, and you think, is this the guy for real?
yeah, it never sat well with me the way that he kind of like, he lots of Guinevere gets blamed for running off with him, and he's like, well, you've just stolen another man's wife, dude. Maybe you should take some of the blame for this.
Right, yeah.
And and I kind of wanted him to be this conniving, weaselly, like, someone who is excellent in a fight, but knows he's excellent in a fight and picks fights with people he knows he can beat. He would never pick a fight with someone that he wasn't certain he could beat.
Right.
And that was how I wrote Lancelot as this, which is why the fight that takes place in there, and I won't spoil it, but it was one of my favorite bits of any of the books I've written. And it was a very cathartic thing to write because it had been something I'd want to write for a long time, and it was very cathartic for the other character as well because he got to do something he'd wanted to do for a very long time.
It's excellent.
And
yeah. So
go on.
sorry, I was just to say, so for people, just as a reminder for people that are watching or listening, if you haven't checked out Steve's books for some reason, why would you have not have by now? But if you haven't, all the links to Steve's social media and his book links and Goodreads and Amazon and his website will all be in the show notes on YouTube or Spotify or Anchor FM, wherever it is you're watching or listening to this. So please do check those out and say hello to Steve as well. It's a great...
Yeah, please do. Always nice to have people say hello. Yeah.
So last time, that was the first time and last time we actually met, because this is one of the weird things that usually when I do these things, it's with people that I've never met before, but we've actually met in person and we're on a panel together at Bristol Con last year. And Ken Shin was with us, so that was quite good because we managed to start talking a lot about Star Wars, which was great. And Alicia also likes Star Wars, so it was great. And that was my plan in the first place, to try and get us on to talk about that. But I wanted to ask you, while you're on, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is out at the end of this month. Are you looking forward to it?
Yes, yeah, I am. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi was one of the few real highlights of that trilogy, of that prequel trilogy. If that prequel trilogy had been him, and you had cut out all of the nonsense about rolling around in sand and discussing sand, and with two people that have no on-screen chemistry at all,
right,
and Jar Jar Binks, they would have been really good films,
yeah.
or at least it would have been a lot better than they are. Yeah, I'm very excited. I think Ewan McGregor did a really good Obi-Wan Kenobi. I thought he was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I really like Rebels.
Yeah.
And Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I don't want to spoil for anyone, but in Rebels, there is a much older Obi-Wan, just before takes place just before New Hope, and his fight with Darth Maul is one of the best fights I've ever seen in Star Wars, and it is a 2-second fight.
Yes,
and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's real proper, samurai. Yeah,
proper samurai kind of like fight from the old kind of samurai films. And it's so clever. And it's one of those things that when you watch it the first time, you're like, well, that's so quick. And then you see all the tiny pieces of movement that he makes and his stance and how he changes his stance and all the rest of it building up to that fight. Yeah, I want to see how Obi-Wan got to that.
Right.
So very looking forward to the show, and the trailer looked great. So I'm and he was doing a little bit of it looked like some MMA stuff in there with the grapples and the throws and I'm here for mixed martial artist Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, and quite a lot of late blaster shooting as well.
Yeah,
which
I was surprised about.
Yeah, so uncivilized, but
it is uncivilized. I like Star Wars a lot. I read the books, and Clone Wars is my favorite Star Wars thing ever.
Yeah, Clone Wars is great. Yeah,
I think the last 2 seasons of Clone Wars are some of the best Star Wars has ever been.
Yes,
and a big chunk of that is down to how much you love the characters,
right?
And Ahsoka in particular was kind of the heart of that whole show.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they can bring a few characters over. I'd quite like to see Rex.
Yeah, Rex would be cool. Yeah, Rex would be good. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just really looking for. Cause I was one of these people that ever since Revenge of the Sith came out with Vader and Obi-Wan, I'm always like that doesn't quite match A New Hope with the kind of when we left you were the master, I was the apprentice, that kind of stuff and everything.
Yeah.
I always felt there was something more there. There was something left unexplored. So I'm really glad that they're actually getting to it and doing it in the 6 episodes and really kind of giving Ewan McGregor a proper send off.
I really liked it. I thought Ewan McGregor was really, really good in those films. But there's only so much you can do with a subpar script.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of the scripts, the third film was by far and away the best because it was focused on Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yeah.
And it worked. And that's what worked.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you started throwing in other characters, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And Order 66 as well. All of that stuff was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first film was very clearly George saying, "Ooh, CGI," and just going crazy. Yeah. And the second film, it felt like 2 films forcibly shoved together.
Right. Yeah.
And one film was a love affair between 2 people that don't seem to actually care about one another in the slightest.
Don't like each other at all.
Yeah. I, at no point in 3 films did I ever get the feeling that Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen wanted to be on the same screen.
Yeah.
Let alone loved one another greatly.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a bizarre one. And then there's the Obi-Wan story of like a really interesting kind of like the Jedi detective
Yeah,
story that could have been. Then it was like if they fleshed out a little bit more. No, yeah, I'm really good fans. You mentioned that you read the books as well. I did. So would you ever pitch a Star Wars book?
yeah. I think every Star Wars fan has a Star Wars book, especially writers who
Yeah,
like Star Wars. So yeah, I have two Star Wars books in my head. Um, One is neither of them involve any of the characters currently in. They're both set after the Knights of the Old Republic time, between then and
right.
now or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And one's about a Sith and one's about a Jedi, and they're not linked or anything. They're just stories that I think that's really cool. I really hope one day I get to write that.
Yeah.
Whether I don't want to do, I have absolutely no idea. Yeah, I have no clue whatsoever. But I would, I would certainly. I think I'd enjoy writing a Star Wars book.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, the ones that I read are very good. The new stuff, the Squadron books and all that kind of stuff is great. But then I read a lot of the old
Yeah,
Legend stuff as well. The problem with the Legend stuff was a lot of it was really hit and miss. It was either
right.
great or it was treading water for however many hundreds of pages.
And lots of them. The problem I had with them was, I mean, I liked a lot of them, but I really didn't like the use on Vong because
Yeah,
one of the
yeah,
problems, yeah, one of the problems I had with it was that, and it's something you see a lot in fantasy as well. Like, I really like Raymond E. Feist's Magician. It's one of my like kind of formative books for fantasy,
yeah,
but it's also something I always think about a lot, where it's like he made Pug and Thomas too powerful by the end of the first book, where it was like every
yes,
single book then were kind of like, how do we take Pug and Thomas out of this?
yeah,
That
yeah,
happened with Star Wars books because they were like, right, we need to do something about Luke Skywalker because he's too powerful. So
yeah,
in the end, they just created this race that the Force didn't affect, which goes against everything that is Star Wars. And I was like,
yeah.
I'm not into this.
I didn't like. There were some great bits. Chewbacca's death was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Screaming at the planet as it crashed into him. That was
yeah,
bloody badass. However, it just got confusing and a bit of a mess. And it reminds me a little bit of the Horus Heresy books. Like it feels a little bit like Horus Heresy books. They have a story they want to tell, but they can't. They want to flesh it out. So occasionally they'll just put a book in, and you're like, well, this has not moved any part of this story forward. It's just these are what these guys did.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and that happened a lot in those Star Wars books. There was a lot of like, and now for book 6, what happened when everybody else was doing stuff that was interesting?
right.
And it was like,
Yeah,
well, why am I reading this? This has no point at all beyond they've got a contract and they need to stick a book out.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I preferred the stuff that they did later, like the zombie book they did, the Darth Maul book,
Yeah,
and all those kinds of stuff, where they did different things. They took the idea and they kind of twisted it around and they messed with it a bit.
right.
Anything that had Ventress in as well, because I love
Yeah,
Ventress.
she's great.
One of my favourite characters.
Yeah, she's great.
Although I wasn't a big fan of her. I think it was the last book where they gave her a love interest.
Yeah, the Dark, was it Dark Apprentice, is it? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I could have done without the love interest for Ventress. I don't think she was pining
Right.
for falling in love. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
she was, wasn't really fussed about any of that. She wanted
Yeah.
power and wealth and
Vengeance.
vengeance.
The
That was
things
all
that
she cared about.
the things that we all want in life.
Yeah, the little things.
Yeah. Before we kind of wrap up and kind of talk, I want to know what it is you've got coming up as well. The MCU. 'Cause I know you post about and talk about movies and TV shows. Like you keep up to date with them quite a lot. Have you been? Because I just finished watching Moon Knight, which I thought was very urban fantasy.
Mm,
You
yeah, it
know,
was.
uh, and again, I love ancient Egypt, so I enjoyed that. What did you think of Moon Knight and everything else that's kind of going on in the MCU at the moment?
I really liked Moon Knight. I thought it was different and interesting, and they did something a little bit less superhero-y with it.
Right.
They did kind of make it a bit of an urban fantasy sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it worked really well. I think it worked really well predominantly because the cast were excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
I loved Stephen. It was
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
I would like to see some more, if I'm honest. I think that was the only shows that I really wanted to see more were Hawkeye. Really wanted to see more of Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Wanted to see more of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I want to see more of Moon Knight.
Moon Knight, yeah.
I wasn't fussed about seeing more of WandaVision because it told a story, and that was that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
No idea what the hell's going on with Loki. It was a weird story. I've enjoyed all of the Marvel Universe TV shows so far.
Yeah.
None of them have been as good as Daredevil was.
Yeah, Daredevil was cracking. It was really, really good.
Yeah. That felt like grown up kind of superhero.
Yeah.
That the kind of superhero stuff that I grew up reading and were hoping they would make.
Right. Yeah.
With, the Daredevil, Frank Miller's Daredevil, and
right.
Ed Brubaker's crime sort of Daredevil and that kind of noir thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping that that's what they would make, and then they did, and I was very happy. And then they cancelled it, and I was very unhappy. I'm hoping they launch it again.
Yeah.
And the MCU films are great. I know people, they complain about MCU films being, the same thing, or being, they're not art or anything, but it doesn't have to be art. It can just be fun.
Exactly.
And that's all I want from my Marvel universe. I want to see characters that I grew up reading beating the hell out of bad guys that I grew up reading.
Right.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I can watch art. I can watch other stuff as well, but I quite like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The thing is, as well, the minute with the MCU is that you kind of at the point, especially with the kind of like legacy characters, I suppose you have to call them at this point, the ones that have been since the start. You're invested in them, and you want to see what they're doing, and they have a real steady line of consistency. There's a couple that drop under every so often, but not very often. They have a couple of real high points. Whereas you compare that with a DC, what they do with it, they will have like their qualities all over the place, but you will then get stuff like the Dark Knight and the Batman that are like quality films. And are probably serious kind of, people would say serious films, but then you'd also get Suicide Squad and Joss Whedon's Justice League and other things like that, which you wouldn't really get with the MCU.
I know that if there's an MCU film out, I will very least enjoy it.
Yes.
There are very few that I have not enjoyed. There are a couple that I didn't really like very much, but not many. And occasionally, and they do more often than not, they'll get an interesting director and really good actor, and they'll produce something like Thor Ragnarok or Winter Soldier or Endgame. And they are not just superhero films, they are excellent films. Winter Soldier is a brilliant action film, or a spy film, or however you want to put it, really. If you took out any mention of Captain America and filmed that as just a full-on spy action film, it would still be amazing. And I think they're very good at that, and they know exactly what they want and know how to do it. DC don't seem to have really figured it out. I think DC, the problem with Marvel is that they didn't have all their big names, all the good thing about Marvel. So they had to start with Iron Man and then Captain America and all the rest of it. But they didn't have the X-Men, didn't have Spider-Man, they didn't have those characters, Fantastic Four. So they forced them to kind of like stretch, put in characters you might not have heard of or know much about. And DC just went straight in and we're like, we'll just stick them all in. It's fine. See what happens.
That's what it's what people want. It's like, no, it's not what we want. We want good films first, and so know who these characters are.
They could have done it gradually, and by film 3 or 4, Batman or Superman, and put in some of the lesser characters going up to it. But they wanted that. They saw the money, and which was the same reason why they did Justice League so badly. And even the Snyder version is a massive improvement on what we got. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
But it's 4 hours long.
4 hours long.
And at
Yeah.
least half of it is slow motion shots.
Right, right. And he still doesn't seem to know what story he's actually telling in that movie.
No, there's really good bits in it. Ben Affleck is great. Henry Cavill's great.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who plays, I can't remember his name, but he plays Cyborg. He's really good in it as well. So there are good bits. Some of the action scenes are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I very much preferred it to the Joss Whedon one. But you do think, dude, we don't need another slow motion shot. We've done.
Yeah.
We're now at like 3.5 hours. Let's get this going. Let's just do this at full speed.
Yeah. It's also, I don't want another just unfocused shot of people coming into focus very, very slowly. But I've had a lot of those. You know, when you got to that last scene where it's like in the future and everything, and they're all kind of all blurry and coming in. I was like, just get on. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Come on.
Yeah, and people are clamoring for a sequel, and they're like, let them do it. And I'm like, no, don't.
No,
I don't want to see any more Jared Leto's Joker.
No.
I'm done with that. Let's get something else. Do something else.
Yeah.
I want them to let Henry Cavill be Superman.
Yeah.
Again, because he's excellent.
Yeah.
And he deserves a shot with a decent script.
Yeah, definitely does.
And I would also like to see the Batman 2 with.
Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm hoping that Colin Farrell's in it a lot as well.
Yes, he was fantastic, and he always is. He's always.
Yes, he's become a bit of a character actor over the years.
Yeah. Yes, he's come a long way since Daredevil. Anyway, that's probably.
He has, yeah, and he's a very good. He was actually good in Daredevil.
He was,
and just ate the scenery.
Yeah,
but he worked. He was not by any stretch of the imagination the worst thing in that film.
No. It was one of those things. Is what I always enjoy looking at this. Is Oscar Isaac did it as well in the Ridley Scott Robin Hood film. I can never forget this film because it was the first date that I had with my wife, and we went to watch Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, and Oscar Isaac was in it as Prince John. Never seen him before, and he was like Colin Farrell in Daredevil, just having a great time and just acting in a completely different film to everyone else was.
Yeah, it's the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves.
Alan Rickman, yeah.
Alan Rickman. Yeah. This film is rubbish, so I am going to ham it up like crazy,
right?
And just eat the scenery and make as much fun as I can have. And sometimes, and that's what you remember about. No one remembers Kevin Costner in Prince of Thieves. No one's like, wow, he was so good as this stoic Robin Hood. You remember cancelling Christmas and
gonna cut his heart out with a spoon. Wow.
Yeah, you remember that because that's the good stuff. It's just completely over the top and silly, but that's what Oscar Isaac did in Robin Hood, and what Colin Farrell did in Daredevil. Colin Farrell very much went to the Alan Rickman school of chewing scenery for Daredevil,
right?
But it was not a good film.
No, it wasn't. So back onto you. What is it? Obviously, you just had a book just come out, so we don't want to be like badgering you for more stuff. But obviously, as you said before at the top of the interview, that you wrote it in finished it in January 2021. So what's next in the pipeline for you? You mentioned a couple of times that you've got a new publisher for your next series. So might you tell us a little bit about that?
The new series is called Riftborn. The first book is called The Last Raven, and it is about a man who is called Lucas Rurik, and he lives in New York. He's I'm not going to say what he is because that's part of the story. But he basically, the idea is that there are these people called Riftborn, and sometimes when someone dies, they get taken into the Rift, which is a dimension that's kind of attached to our own. And they come back with powers, and there's not just them. There's others, revenants and other bits and pieces. and there are people who are trying to use this power to gain more power in this world, and wealth and influence and the like. So yeah, it's a bit more whereas the Harlequin stuff was quite bombastic and very Avengers Endgame, kind of like world ending sort of threats. This is a bit more Daredevil, actually.
Right.
A bit more down to earth, a bit more kind of like a bit a ground level.
Excellent.
There's no one flinging around like lightning and stuff, not yet anyway. Yeah, the it's a bit more down and dirty, and the main character Nate had in the Avalon Chronicles, Nate had a very set moral compass of just charging head first at whatever comes at him until it goes away. And Lucas is a bit different to that. Lucas is someone who would wait until your back was turned and then just cut your throat, walk on. Excellent. And he's a bit meaner. He's not like a horrible guy or anything. He's just a bit there is a problem. Now I'll remove that problem and deal with the next problem. And it's been fun to write. Actually, he's probably a bit more sarcastic than Nate as well, which is quite nice, because I can let that fly a little bit.
Yeah, they are nice to do that. Like I do love a snarky character.
Yeah, he's much more snarky. When in the Harlequin stuff, the snarky stuff was kind of done by Remy and Mordred and stuff, and in this, Lucas is a bit more snarky himself. And yeah, it's been real fun. I've written the first one that's all edited, and I don't know when it's coming out yet because I haven't been told. And I'm writing the second one at the moment, and it's a lot of fun to write. They're a bit darker than what I've written before, and it's it's fun. And after that, I have absolutely no idea. I'm contracted for 3, so I'll write those. And then I've got a novella that I need to write, which will be in the Harlequin universe. And I'd like to write some epic fantasy. I need to do a sequel to Black Coat, my science fiction book. I've got lots of ideas. I've got more ideas than there are possibly time available to write all of the ideas.
Yes.
So write as many as you can. That's kind of I've got lots of ideas. I'm never short of ideas. When I was first starting, I was always a bit worried that I would be like, what if I run out? That's never been a problem ever.
Yeah. That's the great thing about writing, though, is when you're writing on something, and it's the annoying thing as well, because when you work on something, you're focused on it, and then just inside your head, just this little idea just pops up, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. But I'll never get around to it, or I might not get around to it for about 5 years.
Yeah. I've been working on an epic fantasy series now for about 5 years, just writing out world building, writing out history, and all this kind of stuff, and I am determined to write the flipping thing. I started writing it during the pandemic, and got about 30,000 words written, realized it was wrong. So I need to go back and rewrite all of them. Not all of it, but a big chunk. And my brain's like, you need to do it now. You should do it now. And I'm like, no, I have a contract. They want me to write this, and I would like to get paid. So can we just write this first? So yeah, it is always good to have your brain kind of go, but what about this?
Right.
But it's also good if it shuts up for 5 minutes and lets you do what you're asked to do.
Exactly. It's like, you're not the boss of me, but it is. Steve, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Really appreciate it. Pleasure to talk to you as always. People that are watching on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify, Anchor FM, please check out all Steve's links below. Say hello to Steve, read his books, and thank you for staying with us till the end, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.